Welcome back everybody to another episode of Direct Comparison. For today's episode, we're going to be directly comparing various graphical details in Forza Horizon 3 to Ubisoft's newest open world racing game, The Crew 2. Now before we get started, both games are being run on a PC, with the settings cranked up to their highest values at a 1440p resolution. We're going to try and match up the vehicle types, the colors, and time of day, but due to Forza Horizon 3 not featuring an easy way to adjust the time of day, there will be some slight variation. We'll be using the photo modes of both games to get some of our close-up shots, but we'll also be using some standard gameplay footage as well. To keep this simple, we're going to be running through some very basic graphical elements including texture quality, lighting, environmental detail, special effects, sound, and damage modeling. So to kick this off, we'll start by looking at some car models and texture comparisons. First, we have the McLaren P1 with a standard white paint job without any modifications in both games. Now, the models themselves actually look good in both games. All the important details are present, give or take a few slight modifications and grille types. The body of the car itself is consistent between both games. They both use the adaptive spoiler as they should, and there's no real issues with the aliasing. There are two big differences that are clear though from these comparisons: the lighting and the reflective surfaces. The lighting in Forza Horizon 3 looks substantially better than in The Crew 2. Since I can't set the time of day in Forza, I tried to match the time of day using the Crew 2's photo app, but there's no setting that perfectly matches the intensity of the light and coloration in Forza Horizon. There's more global illumination in Forza Horizon that makes for a far more natural looking image. Reflective surfaces are also on full display here, with the sun reflecting off the windows and body of the car. The Crew 2 does have some decent reflective surfaces, but they're not at the same level as Forza. When we take a peek inside the vehicle using the cockpit view, we once again see that Forza has the upper hand, with more texture depth and ambient occlusion. Both games seem to have the same dash, though it stands out a bit more in Forza Horizon. I do have to say though, the texture on the inner part of the steering wheel looks a bit more detailed in The Crew 2. Next we have our Corvette Stingray. Again, the biggest difference are those reflective surfaces. Keep in mind that both vehicles are using a metallic blue paint job, so these differences are in fact due to the limitations of Ivory Tower's game engine. It's interesting to see this kind of significant difference, especially when you consider that Forza Horizon 3 came out nearly 2 years ago, and still manages to hold its own against the brand new Crew 2. But credit where credit is due, the Crew 2's vehicle models do seem to have all the same small details, which is impressive considering the significantly larger size of its game. Next, let's look at some environmental detail. First, we have the road. The Crew 2 appears to have a bit more texture complexity with its road texture in this instance. There's a bit more bump mapping, and it looks a bit better than Forza Horizon. But at the same time, the roads in the Crew 2 do have some weird plastic appearance that doesn't appear very realistic, even if the textures are technically more complex. Dirt textures are pretty much the same story. They both look good and feature enough variation that it's difficult to identify any repeating patterns. The same can't be said for the Crew 2's object and environmental texture work. Various props in the game world look terrible when compared to Forza Horizon. I looked around at various objects in Forza and then at similar objects in the Crew 2, and in every instance, Forza's textures and object complexity were better. The character models of random pedestrians are absolutely horrible in the Crew 2, and might be one of the worst graphical aspects of the game. I was surprised by how ridiculously bad some of the models look, even your own character, who is evidently shocked by whatever's in front of him. Forza Horizon doesn't feature nearly as many pedestrians in its open world, so the character models near the large event areas have a much higher quality appearance. Now, let's take a look at some effects. One effect I wanted to talk about is the amount of dirt accumulation when driving off-road. Both games have this really cool looking effect, and both approach it differently. In Forza Horizon, dirt builds very gradually and isn't as obvious at first glance. Off-roading for extended periods of time gives the vehicle a dirtier overall appearance. But in the Crew 2, dirt accumulation is much faster and only happens in certain environments. Off-roading in the dry desert, for example, doesn't seem to affect the vehicles at all in the Crew 2, whereas in Forza, there's a light layer of dirt on the side of the vehicle. Water effects have come a long way in racing games, and lately look awesome in every modern racing game. When driving through deep puddles in Forza Horizon, water droplets appear on the screen as if watching the game through a camera lens. The vehicle itself also accumulates a large amount of water droplets. The Crew 2 doesn't share this feature, and oddly enough, the vehicles also don't appear to be affected by the water in any way aside from making a splash. There's no water droplets on the body of the car. Now, the feature is present in the Crew 2, but only during rain situations or when driving a boat in the water. Damage simulation is another big one. Now, damage doesn't necessarily mean much in an arcade racing game, but Forza Horizon still has more complex damage models that can be either cosmetic or affect your actual driving capabilities if you enable it in the settings. The Crew 2, as we discussed before, has some pretty lackluster damage modeling. Next we have sound design. Now, I'm going to play a few clips here, one for each game, and you can decide which sounds better. And so that wraps up this comparison. Overall, Forza Horizon 3 is a better looking game. The lighting, reflective surfaces, environmental detail, and effects all seem to be a step up over the Crew 2. Now, the Crew 2 did have a few instances where it featured more complex texture designs, and it does have a far larger open world to explore, which can definitely contribute to a lower overall graphical presentation. It'll be interesting to see how the new Forza Horizon 4 stacks up when it releases this fall, and be sure to stay tuned for more information on that. Until then, don't forget to like and subscribe for more videos like this posted every week.